Hello everyone, welcome to Real Learning Center. In this domain of trying to understand various life processes, we got to know that there are so many organ systems present in our body. We studied about two important organ systems, the digestive system and the respiratory system in our previous sessions. We got to know that digestive system is a very important system, giving us all the basic micromolecules into our body, helping us to develop, helping us to grow, helping us to generate all the various parts that we need to survive and sustain our life. We also got to know, when we learned about respiratory system, that there is a constant supply of oxygen into our body. Now, in today's session, let us try to move on further and talk about another system, which is the circulatory system. Now, the first question that comes to our mind is, why do we need a circulatory system and how does it work? What is the need for a proper circulatory system in a complex organism, say like humans? We have seen that in digestive system, a big macromolecule is broken down into smaller micromolecules which can give rise to energy. And in respiratory system, we saw that the small microorganisms alone cannot give energy. It needs oxygen so that there is burning of food, which in biology we call it as oxidation. So circulatory system is one system which is very important because this brings the oxygen and the fuel together so that there can be energy produced. And this energy is not in the form of fire as we see generally in the log of wood burning, but you see that they provide energy which can be used by our organisms to grow, to breathe, to survive, to digest, and to perform various activities of life that we have discussed earlier. That's the reason why we need to have a sophisticated circulatory system which takes in the fuel to all the cells, which takes in oxygen to all the cells, and see to it that these two are put together in a cell so that they can get oxidized. And the whole process of this is efficiently managed by the circulatory system. Now, we saw that heart is one important organ in the circulatory system which helps the fuel to meet oxygen, and that happens inside the cell. It helps to carry the oxygen and the fuel to various cells in our body. And how does this heart work? Now, there is fuel from the digestive system, there is oxygen from the respiratory system, and if all these raw materials for giving out energy has to be put together, they have to be moved across the body, go into the cells, and that is the place where we want energy as such. Therefore, it becomes a primary criteria for these things to be supplied to each and every cell. And when it has to be supplied to each and every cell, obviously we need to see that there has to be one system which can move throughout the body, and hence it has to be in its fluid form. Now, if it has to be in fluid form, you see that there is one very nice component of circulatory system which is called as the blood. Blood is a fluid tissue which can take in lot of components into it. It can take nutrients, it can take the raw materials for energy, it can take oxygen, it can mix with all of these, and you see that because it is in its fluid form, it is very easy to be transported from one part of the body to the other. And if there is blood, there has to be something which kind of pumps this blood to various parts of the body. And that pumping is carried out by our organ, very important organ in our circulatory system, called as the heart. Heart is called as the pumping organ because it is made up of a special kind of muscles which can undergo constant expansion and relaxation. Because of this, you see that they can always keep moving and keep pumping, and the blood which has to be sent throughout the body first enters into the heart. It pumps the blood with such a force that it can reach to all the parts of the body. So this way, the blood, which is composed of many types of cells, has the ability to have many nutrients, many gases, oxygen, carbon dioxide, and many others, is transported to each and every cell of our body with the help of a beautiful pumping organ called as our heart. Now, if the heart is present and it has to, kind of pump, there is always, two things that we need to remember. The first thing is that the blood which has to be transported to all the cells should enter the heart, and this blood which is entering the heart goes to all the cells, gives all the nutrients, gives the oxygen as well, gives all the fuel for the cells, and then it takes in all the toxins and has to come to the heart again so that it can be sent out. Again, it can be pumped back. So there has to be some kind of physical forces which govern the movement of blood in the system. And that is very well structured by a beautiful mechanism of how the heart structure is. If you see the structure of our circulatory system, and especially the heart, because it is the one which is very important pumping organ of our circulatory system, you see that heart is made up of 4 chambers. Now those 4 chambers are the right atrium, the right ventricle, the left atrium, and the left ventricle. So you see that there are 4 chambers in the heart. The upper 2 are called as atria, or we also call it as auricles, and then we have the lower chambers which we call as the ventricles. Always the auricles are considered to be the receiving chambers of the heart. So they receive the blood in the auricles, and then the blood is sent to other parts of the body by the ventricles. So this way you see our heart made up of 4 chambers, the right 2 chambers called as the right auricle and the left auricle, and the lower 2 chambers called as the left auricle and right ventricle and the left ventricle. Now these 4 chambers are all separated because you see that out of all the 4 chambers that we just showed here, you see that each of these chambers has a different type of blood. So all the blood that is coming from the right auricle should be separated to the right ventricle and so on, and that is carried out by a very thin membrane structure which is called as the septum. The septum is a small muscular layer that you see around which separates the right part of our heart to the left part of our heart. You also see that there is presence of few membranes here which separates the auricles and the ventricles. Now the presence of these membranes will clearly help us to find out that our heart is made up of 4 different chambers. Now, when we have a 4-chambered heart, I told you that blood has to be transported and and these are separated, but there has to be some pipe which takes in blood or gives out blood and all that, which helps in transportation, right? So there has to be something that helps to get the blood into the heart and take the blood out of the heart, and that is possible with the help of few pipes that are present in our heart system. So you have the various pipes which I'll tell you in some time. So you see that all these pipes, the aorta, then we have the superior vena cava, inferior vena cava, and the pulmonary artery, all these are going to help us to take the blood into and out of our heart. Now, the structure seems quite confusing now. The reason is the whole of circulatory system is to transport fuel and oxygen into the cells and also nutrients, of course. Now, if this has to be performed well, why is it that we need 4 chambers in our heart? Right? Now, our body has a very nice mechanism to see that always the blood is filled with enough of nutrients, enough of fuel, and enough of oxygen. And how does it ensure that? Now, that is ensured by seeing to that the blood is always in motion. Now, because the blood is always in motion, it goes near the small intestine and you see that it absorbs nutrients. And then the blood comes to one of the parts of our heart, especially, the right auricle here. The blood comes to the right auricle. When it comes to the right auricle, now the blood might have nutrients, but you see that it does not have enough oxygen. Okay, now what you see is as soon as the blood enters into the right auricle, the pressure in the right auricle increases. Therefore, it opens up, it increases, and then in its size, and then the blood, because the pressure is more, enters into the right ventricle. Now, there is a small opening here, which we call it as the valve. Now, these valves will allow the blood to flow only in one single direction, moving the blood from the right auricle to the right ventricle. As soon as it goes to the right ventricle, you see that its size increases. Now, when its size increases, then there is some pressure on the valve here, which allows the blood to go out of the heart system into the pulmonary artery. So the blood enters into the pulmonary artery, and it enters into the pulmonary artery and goes to the lungs. Now we have already seen what happens in lungs. There is oxygen intake. So there is enough of oxygen in the alveoli, and the blood entering from the pulmonary artery reaches the lungs. And when it reaches the lungs, there is exchange of gases through diffusion. So oxygen is taken from the alveoli, and the carbon dioxide which is there in this blood going out of the right ventricle is given out into the alveoli. Now, the blood which was there in the pulmonary artery undergoes diffusion and becomes more or less pure, more or less filled with oxygen. Now, this blood which is coming from the lungs will enter the left part of our lungs. From the lungs, it gets oxygenated and it comes back to the left auricle. Now, when it comes back to the left auricle, you see that it carries good blood, but again, since the pressure increases here, it goes to the left ventricle. Now, in the left ventricle, when the pressure increases, you see that it gets contracted, and then all the blood which is here goes into the aorta and it is sent out of the body. Sorry, goes into the aorta and is sent throughout the body. So this way, you see how the four chambers will sync in its function and they help in the movement of the blood. First, it goes to lungs, gets oxygenated, comes back to heart, and then from there it gets enough pressure to be circulated throughout the body. So this way, our circulatory system functions. It is through this process of contraction and expansion of the auricles and the ventricles rhythmically that our heart helps the fuel to meet oxygen. So you see that there is blood entering into the right auricle, which is blue colored mainly because it lacks oxygen now, and this is pumped in to the lower chamber of the heart, which is our right ventricle. From the right ventricle, it reaches into the arteries and goes out to the lungs, gets oxygenated, comes back to the left auricle and then to the left ventricle, and then it is circulated throughout our body. So till now we saw how our blood gets circulated into the heart and into the lungs and all this. Now, there is one very fine mechanism that you see in our circulatory system, and that is that our heart does not go out of the pipes that it is allowed to go, which we call as the arteries and the veins. Yes, so suppose we have our body filled with so many small pipe-like structures. You see that the blood flow keeps flowing only in these pipe-like structures and it does not get spread out into the body, and that is called as a closed type of circulation. Why do we call this as a closed type of circulation? Is because it is moving only in the closed pipe-like structures, going towards the heart or coming from the heart. But you see that the blood does not come out of these pipes, and hence we call this as the closed type of circulation. Many of our higher organisms have this type of closed type of circulation. Now you might be wondering why, that I puncture any part of my body and you see the blood coming out and you don't see any kind of pipe-like structures, right? Maybe when you have fallen down, you would see the blood oozing out, but you don't see any kind of pipe-like structure. Maybe if you prick your hand in one point and just another next point, you see from both the points you can get blood. Then how is it even possible that you have pipes all over the body? Now, always the pipes which are very closer to the heart are slightly larger, slightly bigger, whereas in all the rest of our body, you see that there are very, very thin, fine pipes. Okay, and these fine pipes are called as capillaries. These capillaries are so thin that they are very close to the cells, most of the cells, and there can be easy exchange of the nutrients, of the gases, and of the fuel that we are talking about. So this way, our circulatory system is a closed type of circulatory system, and also it is so efficient that the smallest pipe-like structures called as the capillaries are present throughout the body, ensuring the proper circulation of all the required ingredients for the cell to survive. And also it ensures that it can transfer its waste into the capillaries, which can be taken back to the heart, and then it gets purified and gets circulated again, and our body is fresh. Human blood circulation is also called as a double circulation. Now, why do we call this as a double circulation? We know what circulation is all about. So, the blood from the heart goes into all the parts of the body, collects waste, goes to the heart, gets purified, and comes back to the heart again. Right? This is how is the process. But it is not as simple as I said, because you see that there is first entry of bad blood into the right part of the heart, then it goes to lungs, gets purified, again comes back to heart, and then again you see that once it comes back to the heart, it is pure blood and it gets circulated throughout the body. You see that the blood has to travel the heart 2 times, and hence we call this as double circulation. So as you see here, we have heart in the center. So there is blood entering into the lungs then. You can notice that the color of the blood which is entering the lungs is blue now. Now the lungs purifies the blood, and you see that the blue color blood becomes red because it is oxygenated. Now this oxygenated blood comes back to heart again, and once it comes back to heart, you see that this part of the blood gets transported to rest of the body, and when it is getting transported to rest of the body, you see that the good form of the blood becomes again bad form. You can see the color change from red to blue, saying that it is now again deoxygenated, lack of nutrients and many other things. Again it goes back to the heart. So this way, because our blood travels heart twice to complete one circulation, we call our circulatory system as a double circulation or double circulatory system. Now, you might be wondering what would happen once the oxygen is given into the blood. Now, once the fuel and the oxygen is given into the blood, each cell, depending on its position, depending on its energy requirements, carries out oxidation. And when it carries out oxidation, there is energy release. And that energy release is used to carry out various functions. It can be to walk, it can be to run, it can be to swim, it can be to sleep, or it can be also used to study and understand few things. Now, in our next session, we will talk about how the energy is used by the muscles to bring about locomotion. Unlike plants, which make their own food and make their own energy, we completely depend on other sources for energy. So we have seen that we need food, we need oxygen, and we need a proper circulatory system to survive. Now, once we get energy, the most important thing that animals do is, and they are different, the most important thing that characterizes an animal is its movement or its locomotion. So in our next session, let us talk about how the muscles in our body help us to move from one place to other with the energy that is liberated from various organ systems pulled together. So have fun time learning about various systems. See you in the next session.